Welcome back to another episode on the Gold Room. Thanks for tuning in. Today, lucky enough to have Luke Hampson in the studio from Nimy Resources. Mate, ASX ticker NIM?
That's right, Josh. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem, mate. Look forward to it. Life in the times, mate. Let's go.
Okay, let's go. What do you want to know?
Well, a WA boy?
Yes.
Yep.
I grew up in a few country wheat belt towns, but mainly Muck and Booden, otherwise known as the centre of the universe.
Really?
Yeah, 50-metre swimming pool.
Oh, wow.
Grassed oval. No one else had that, Josh.
That's awesome, mate. And schooling?
I came down to Perth after doing my primary school there.
Yeah, okay.
Went to Guildford Grammar School.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it's a nice bloody high school.
Yeah.
And then university?
No.
No university?
No.
Far out, mate. And what age did you leave school?
After year 12.
Oh, finished right the way through.
Well, university maybe. I used to go and have a kick at a football there.
Yeah, okay.
Every lunchtime.
Yeah, right, down some pints or in the afternoon?
No, just a kick at a footy.
Okay. Mate, let's get into Nimy Resources. Mm-hmm. Can you go into a little bit of how it got its name?
Well, it was a bit, can I use the word serendipitous, I suppose?
Yeah, for sure.
The ground back in 1994 was held by Western Mining for about 2 years, and they called it the Mons Project.
Okay.
Now, I've got Irish heritage, part of is Irish, and within that family tree, if you like, there was a particular guy that fought at Nimy, which happened to be in Mons.
Wow.
And I'd done a fair bit of research on him. We'd been to Ireland and gone to the old house and been to the Tower of London where the Royal Fusiliers are and checked him out and everything else like that. And then I thought, well, that's as good a name as any, Nimy Resources, given that it had been previously called Mons. Nimy is in Mons.
Yep.
So that's where it started.
Wow, mate, that's awesome. So the Mons Project covers approximately, I've got it somewhere there, 3,000 odd kilometres.
Just over, a tick over 3,000 square kilometres. Yeah.
And good ground?
Good ground, yeah. Virtually unexplored. Only a couple of explorers have been there. As I said, Western Mining had it for about 2 years, did some soil sampling, some auger sampling.
Yep.
I think there was Image Resources perhaps in the early 2000s. Some air core sampling and some soil sampling as well. It's even though it's only 370 kilometres roughly northeast of Perth, the last 70 kilometres is not easy.
Yep.
So thick bush, didn't have a lot of roads, or there was some old tracks there. But when we first got it, which was 2015, it was out of the car and walk.
Wow. And so you put roads in there now?
Yeah, we've tidied up what's there, and obviously access roads to the drilling and that we've done.
Yeah. And we actually had someone in the other day from WA Mining Club, Tim, and he said some juniors have had, I wouldn't say issues, but just communication, or there's been a few, I guess, issues with TOs around certain mining areas. Have you had any issues there?
TOs?
Traditional owners.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Sorry,
No.
mate.
No? Melinda Gooley of the group that we deal with, they have the claim over where we are. And they were out doing a survey only a couple of months ago leading up to this.
Awesome.
And they were really good.
Yeah, cool.
So they did the initial survey, and then were really wanted to monitor some of it and came back and did that really quickly. Yep. So they were easy to deal with.
Awesome. That's great. That's great to hear. Yeah. That's awesome. With such a large tenement holding, what are some of the resources that Nimy's targeting?
Well, because it's such a large tenement holding and there's a couple of different geological areas there, initially when we went in it was about nickel because it was relatively obvious. We had outcropping. The air core that had been done historically had come up with some good nickel results. And that's the south of the tenement. And what that's turned out to be is komatiite flows, quite large, thick komatiite flows. Now, everyone knows nickel didn't go well for long. At the same time, we were looking for other commodities as well. And our focus switched to the northern part of the tenement, very different geological setting. And right now we're successful at Masson in locating massive sulfides containing copper, nickel, PGEs. And then, of course, there's the Gallium story, which people are fairly familiar with.
Yep.
And that was an unexpected hit there. We're there looking for copper gold. We still think it's there. but there's a lot of gallium there.
And so what's gallium used for? Gallium is the hot topic at the moment, isn't it?
Well, it is, in a way. It's a hot topic for those, I suppose, in the know and that understand what the demand potentially is.
Can we go into that?
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'll go back to when we first got the drilling back, and it was, I think it was 2 holes, two 40-metre holes RC. And we had in the GA column, because that's all we knew at the time, these very big numbers we hadn't seen before. And we had a look at it, found out it's gallium, right? So went through that and then started doing a bit of research on it. And we found that in, I think it was about August 2023, China had banned the export of gallium. And so we did a bit more research and had a look at what's gallium used for. So semiconductors, right? So the high end, all the AI data centres, all that sort of stuff is reliant upon gallium semiconductors, not to mention Defence Force applications. So a couple of critical areas there that suddenly the US in particular didn't have access to those raw materials. And then we had a look at, well, who's exploring? There was probably 1 or 2 others. Had a look at who was processing in the Western world, pretty much nobody. So there was a big gap there. And then gallium started creeping up on the what's of economic importance and what is of security importance. So we've followed that through. We've learnt more and more about it. We've developed, and we're drilling right at the moment. We put some results out on Monday. So we look like we're going to have a fairly substantial high-grade gallium resource standalone at this point. However, there is possibility there's rare earths and other commodities there, and in particular, potentially a base metal deposit.
How do you go about processing it?
Well, that's the $1 million question, isn't it? Because
it's probably more than $1 million.
Yeah. Sorry, a bit of a Dr. Evil moment there. We've got an agreement, if you like, a collaborative agreement now with Curtin University, who are handling that for us, looking at the metallurgy and what is the optimal processing.
Were you working with Tony Tang on that?
He was involved, yeah.
Smart man.
Yeah, and that's led by Christian Price, who's our technical director.
Spoken to him as well. He's amazing.
So if you really want to get into the technical part of it, I'm not going to do it justice, but I'll give it a shot.
Yeah, go mate, get into it.
So if you look at how gallium has been produced predominantly around the world, it's as a byproduct of zinc or bauxite or coal mining.
Yep.
So a little bit of it out the side at the end, and that's pretty much met the demand previously. China's a different story. We've been able to locate some deposits that look very much like what we're looking at in terms of contained in a chlorite schist. It's part of an alteration zone around a base metal deposit. So our grades are sort of matching that, the real high grade stuff. So in terms of the processing, that's in Curtin's hands right now. So they've got the samples, had them for a month or so. We're probably looking at about, what are we now, towards the end of June, we're probably looking in July sometime to get that result. And that'll give us an idea of where to move. But there are different techniques starting to emerge with different companies, which we're keeping an eye on as well.
Okay.
So, we're fairly confident because originally CSIRO did the work to identify where it was hosted. And it's the high grade's in a chlorite. So the next step is, can we separate that chloride out, produce some sort of concentrate, and from there, and again, this becomes Curtin, so I don't want to go too far until we actually know, how do we separate that out and what are we likely to get? So we've got, I think we had a grade of 300, roughly 300 ppm in the samples that we've given.
What does that compare to with other finds, other gallium finds?
Well, when you're looking at something like bauxite or zinc, the numbers vary, but you might have 50 to 100.
Okay,
and then
it's considerable.
And then what's extracted might be 10 or 20, right? So grams per tonne.
Yeah.
I won't talk in ppm because everyone's talking grams per tonne.
Yeah, grams per tonne, yeah.
Whereas, we're starting off with that 300, so really high grade. And what CSIRO came back with an estimate, within chloride, if we can separate that out, it's 400 to 800. So quite an upgrade there. So there's a bit of work to be done to prove that we can get it out of the chlorite, but it is looking promising.
Nimy Resources aims to establish a JORC-compliant operation. Can you just go into what JORC-compliant is?
Yeah. effectively, it's the industry standard for being able to publish a credible resource.
Okay.
So grade and volume and any other components that go into that might affect that. It's pretty important for investors and also for potentially offtake partners and that to be able to trust that you're interpreting the grade and volume for one or for two of the exploration that your results that you're getting. So it's a next stage for us. So we released an exploration target, JORC-compliant exploration target, which is a lot looser and it's really about an area. And then, you go back and you step it out or infill it or whatever you might want to do to prove up that target.
Okay.
Right. So it's a lot more detailed level, if you like, of information required to give a greater confidence level around how much have you got and what is the grade of it.
Yep. Yeah, it's obviously important. Shareholders, existing stakeholders, and future.
Well, and
stakeholders.
extremely important for the company to be able to, when you move forward with it, is it going to be commercial? Yeah. So all the other inputs that come in, are pretty much, led by that.
Yeah. Okay. The company's entered into agreements with, as you did mention, with Curtin University.
Yeah.
What stage are you at there?
Well, they have the samples now. They're doing the metallurgy and the processing work for us.
Have they given you an idea how long that'll take, or is there?
I think we're due in July. I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's the next? What's the process after that?
Well, we're doing drilling at the moment, so we'll assess that. I think we put an announcement out Monday, and there'll be announcements. I think based on the rate of drilling and how quickly we get the assays back. Probably one per week, I would think. Every 3 or 4 holes.
Yep.
Out for the next month or so. There's 20 odd holes there, and that's all about the gallium. So there's that. Then we'll get an idea of what the widths are and what the grades are and all that, and that all feeds into the JORC calculation, as does the Curtin work around recovery and everything else. So a lot of information coming in at the moment, and ultimately, we should be able to deliver a JORC resource, and we're looking at the last quarter this year to do that.
So would you look at setting up a pilot plant close to the source? Or
depends on what the processing turns out to be.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, it's wide open at the moment. And as I said, there are companies, exploration companies, but also potential processing companies developing different processing methodologies.
Can you get grants from the government for exploring with gallium? Because if it can be used for, I was just thinking, if it can be used for defence force applications.
Yeah, critical metals. It all falls under that to a large degree. And there's also your research and development when you're at the cutting edge of things.
Awesome. So you've looked down the line of.
We're into all of that.
Awesome. Yeah, that's bloody fantastic.
But the real thing that's going to pull it through, like everything, and particularly something like gallium, which is relatively new on the radar for people, which is what the US Defence Force application is used for. I think, from what I've heard, they use them as radars to be able to detect drones.
Wow.
Need
those in the future, don't you?
Yeah, well.
Taking out, see those
fairly important.
Drones taking out aeroplanes now.
Yeah.
In Russia.
It's crazy.
I was shocked.
Yeah, it's all crazy. I remember we're getting off topic a little bit.
That's what we do here, mate.
Okay.
I'm all about it.
A few years ago when I think there was drones being used in the Middle East, people were up in arms. This is not the way to do it. And now it's the only way to do it.
Yeah.
Whether it's, Russia, Ukraine or what's going on in the Middle East now, it's all...
Israel, Iran, crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's just
do you know what?
Beggars belief.
You'd prefer that to boots on the ground.
Yeah. I prefer it not to be happening at all.
Oh, for sure. But warring countries, it's always been around.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're off topic. And I've always said no politics, no religion, and no bad quarterly reports on this show, mate.
Right. Okay. So what was it? Politics?
No religion, no politics, and no bad quarterly reports.
Yeah, don't have any of them, mate. So we're
great.
Good.
Beautiful, mate. The Masson Project. Let's go into that. Yeah, promising results. You've got heaps of copper and everything.
Yeah. And That came about. We did a 2,417 line kilometre VTEM survey.
Awesome.
Right, which is not going to show you necessarily massive sulphides, but it's going to show you trends in the sulphides. And then looking at the gaps and structurally where you should be looking. And we use resource potentials as our geophysicists to do that interpretation. And they came up with the target itself. They came up with 230-something picks from the data, right, which is fair enough. It's a big data set.
Are you able to send those pictures across to us? So while we're having a yarn, we can be throwing those up on the screen.
Yeah,
That's what we do.
Yeah, Richard's
all over it.
Into that. He loves that sort of thing.
Nice work, Richard.
Yeah. You're a very colour coordinated individual, as you can see. Fawn.
Yeah, nice. I saw when he turned up this morning. I was like, is he out to farming? He's very agricultural.
Yeah.
Hey, mate, this is our show.
Yeah. You'll find that with Richard. He tries to get in on the act. But,
yeah. Next time, Rich, mate, wait your turn.
Quite the extrovert.
Yeah.
But now what were we getting?
Mate, so
before Richard interrupted?
No, the Masson Project with.
So we did a ground survey, a moving loop survey. Came up with some high-powered conductive plates and drilled them, and Masson was built from that. So the first hole, I think, at about 102 metres down hole, we got about 10 metres of sulphide, of which 4 metres, the middle 4 metres was massive sulphide, and that was actually more nickel than copper. 0.7 and 0.5 and quite a few PGEs. But as we've...
What's PGEs?
Platinum group elements, so platinum, palladium.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Wow, far out. That's awesome.
Yeah, always handy, I think.
Yeah.
And then we continued to do downhole surveys, and we kept extending the target. So pretty much every hole that we've put in there has come up with mineralisation. But what we're finding, the deeper we're getting, the copper is taking over. So it's at the moment fairly unique, certainly unique in the area. Probably not supposed to be there, but it's there. And we brought Dr. John Simmons in to assess it, and he's been with us for a couple of months now, and also to look through all the data and see are there lookalike targets, because the chances that we, in all our brilliance, have found the best and only one there are slim.
Yep.
So there's it's perspective for more of the same.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Far out. That's something else that we need a lot more in the world is copper.
Copper, yeah. Yeah. And it's got a lot of molybdenum around it, which is sort of interesting as well in itself, because typically I think that goes into a porphyry system. So not saying it's a porphyry, that's Dr. John's job to work out what that is, and we're working through that. And CSIRO have been on to that as well.
Yep.
Working out.
Sounds like you've got a great support structure around this business.
Yeah, we've brought or collaborated with some really, really clever people.
Yep.
Which is what you need.
That's what makes all the difference.
Yeah, it does. Where I suppose the genesis of the project, there's a couple of battlers out there walking around the ground, rock chipping and soil sampling.
Yep.
But there is a moment of truth there where you've got to actually look at it and go, what does the project need to take it forward?
Yep.
And we're bringing that expertise in. But also in a vote of confidence, that expertise is willing to come and collaborate, and we need that.
Yep.
I think if there was, if people didn't have confidence in the prospectivity of what we found so far, they wouldn't come.
Yep.
And CSIRO, they've got plenty of people they can work with.
Yep.
Curtin have got a lot of people they can work with. So we're lucky.
Yeah. I guess with the copper that you've found and the importance of the energy sector here in Australia, you really want to be trying to find more copper. You want to be drilling and drilling and drilling to try and to try and grow on what you've got there.
Yeah.
So how are you going to go about that?
Well, it's we're back into it. Don't worry. But the important thing is now that we've made that discovery, is structurally what's its setting, where did it come from, and where is more of it.
Yeah.
So that's you take a deep breath, you bring people like Dr. John Simmons in, you bring CSIRO in, and say where is this? What's our best bet here?
Yep.
So Masson, I expect to be a flurry of activity around that.
Awesome. In the next 6, 12,
Next 3 to 6 months, I think we'll see a fair bit on it.
Okay, pretty quickly coming on.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Mate, over 3,000 kilometres of greenstone.
Yeah.
What's that about?
Well, Western Australia is famous for its greenstone belts, and that's where all the mineralisation is.
Wow, I didn't know that. I thought greenstone was, you're looking at that over in New Zealand. Everyone's walking around with those greenstone necklaces. It's not the same?
What do they matter? Jade or something, are they?
Is it? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. We can get chrysoprase and that, which is similar in these settings.
Okay.
But effectively, the context is, it's like every, and I'm going to sound like a geologist here, which is...
Nothing wrong with that, mate.
Yeah.
You can lick that rock if you like.
I might sound like one, and I might not. But, effectively, the settings, if you like, that you find different rock types are all according to the ages they've come through and then what's happened to them after, different heats, pressures, deformations, fluids, all that sort of stuff,
Yep.
When you get a geologist, and we've got a couple of good ones, when they get on a roll with that, it's pretty hard to stay with it. But I try to understand as much as they're telling me.
They love it, don't they?
Yeah.
They love it.
Oh, it is interesting.
Yeah, very
and
much
it is
so.
a big detective game.
Yeah.
And there can be subtle little differences that lead you in a different direction, and it might make you successful versus the textbook that leads you in a direction that only relates to a previous find.
Yep.
So there's a little bit of difference in a lot of things. But what we have is, what you say, ultramafic sequences there.
Explain that to me. Remember, I'm just a bloody sparky, mate.
Well, geochemically, they're identifiably different, and also textures, and also the timing. As our geologists are sort of smashing into me, timing's everything. So when did it come through? What it determines in a lot of ways, when was that volcanic activity, if you like, determines what the opportunity for mineralisation might have been. So for us, as I said at the outset, we've got komatiites in the south, and they tend to strike in a north easterly direction. We've got this possibly a flexure point where block 3 is, which is east-west, and then everything sort of heads off to the northwest. So northeast, flexure point, east-west, and then off to the northwest.
Yeah, okay.
And what we've found is that there's different mineralisation in those 3 areas.
Yep.
Possibly there's obviously other types of events in there, later stage events that might lead to lithium and different things like that, that potential's there as well.
Mate, you're going to have the full complement.
Well, I often say to people, I've been on this ground now for coming up 10 years, and people will be exploring this area well after I'm retired.
Yep.
Plans
for that?
What, retirement? No, I've got 3 boys.
What ages?
Well, 2 of them are at uni. Just one's in his final year, and the other one's first year.
What are they studying?
The oldest boy is commerce.
Yeah, okay.
The middle boy is criminology, and then he's going into law. And the youngest boy is year 10.
Okay. Are you going to push them into becoming a geo?
No.
No?
No, I won't push him into anything.
Okay.
I'm not, sorry about that, I'm not that sold on your kids having to go into what you do.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know that works overly well.
Yeah.
It does, but not all the time.
Yeah.
If they can find what they're passionate about, and they've all got different interests.
Yeah, for sure.
Then I prefer they follow them.
That's good. That's a really good outlook.
And they need to be, they follow their own dreams. They get smacked around as they should.
Yep.
They're
learning.
Failure, success, whatever it might be.
Yep.
I'm happy with that.
Yeah, that's good. Right. The last question I have for you, mate, is what does the next 12 to 18 months hold for Nimy Resources? Because I want to get you back in 12 to 18 months and hold you to account.
Yep.
Say, mate, where are we at? Have we kicked all those goals? Is this pilot plant up and running? What's going on with Gallium?
Okay.
And the rest of everything else you've got going on.
Yeah. No, I've no problem coming back. In terms of what we're foreseeing, what we're planning, we've got a pretty good strategy around the gallium in terms of the development of that. And you know, we're going hard at the moment. There's 20-odd holes being drilled. So we should have not only a JORC resource, should have a really good idea on how we're going to extract it, and we should be connected to the market.
Beautiful.
Right? So, you know, and that's an interesting one, right? We have a lot of discussions with people in Europe and in the US, US with the M2I Global collaboration we've got there. So we get a lot of feedback on the capability and supply. So for us, we're confident that we're going to drill this and we're going to have a JORC resource, right? Yep. And then extracting it, or what does a product look like for starters? Where does it feed into, and you know, where does it eventually become a semiconductor and start its life? You know, we've got to connect all that up.
Yeah, I wonder if we can start bloody manufacturing semiconductors here. How amazing would that be? Rather than sending everything off to Taiwan or wherever. It'd be nice to start doing a little bit of that here.
Well, that's the US plan.
Is it?
Oh, yeah.
Well, to ship it to the States?
The US is all about, you know, becoming self-sufficient.
For sure, definitely. But are they wanting us to manufacture here, or just provide them with the raw material?
I would say initially it's provide the raw material.
Yeah. I mean, they're probably well set up. They've got the population.
It doesn't mean the opportunity's not here.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, there could be someone watching this thinking, it's probably Tony Tang thinking,
probably.
after we process it, what are we doing next?
Yeah.
He's a smart man. It was awesome having him in the studio to talk to him. Bloody awesome. Well, mate, thank you very much. Much appreciated you coming in and spending the time with us. Hopefully, bloody Richard in the corner there is happy with the outcome.
And he can probably dress a bit more expressively next time.
We'll make sure we'll get him on.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, mate. Awesome.
Okay. Thanks, Josh.
Thanks very much for tuning into another episode on The Gold Room. Much appreciated. Don't forget Nimy's ticker, NIM. Jump on board.